Hey YouTube, it's Jay, and today we're doing break number 2 for 8 ball. So I mentioned that there are only a few breaks that I use in 8 ball. The one that I predominantly used was the one that was in the last video. That's the one where from the center of the table and you're breaking. It typically makes a ball and you have a runnable table sitting there with no real breakouts. That's a really good break, and I use it almost exclusively. However, on days when maybe I'm not feeling my stroke or I'm a little iffy on whether I feel like I can run the table, or I'm just playing a really strong opponent and I want to make sure that I don't give them an open table, I'll use this break. Okay, you can see it's a really hard break, but it leaves a cluster in the middle of the table. And that's exactly what we want to do. It's still runnable, it's still makeable, but you're not going to do it without dealing with this cluster of balls in the center, with either group. So this is a really good, what I would call defensive break. And what I mean by that is not that this table is not runnable. Every table is runnable if you have a shot. What I mean by it being defensive is that regardless of which group you get, you're going to have some kind of a grouping of balls either in the middle here, or maybe you'll get a little cluster over to one side, that you have to work through to be able to get out. It makes the game longer, it tends to make more safety play happen, it's a little more strategic way of going about it rather than just the big break and then run out, and if you miss they win. So that was that break out of the magic rack. I'm going to show it to you out of a wooden rack next. Okay, so same break using a wooden rack. And again, you can see we left a cluster of balls in the middle of the table that's going to take some work to get out. That's the whole goal of this. This is not about making the ball. This is not about spreading the balls out real good. This one is about breaking defensively so that you're leaving them with a difficult shot after the break. You can see this is going to be a pretty difficult shot no matter which one they decide to take. And leaving clusters so that you can deliberately get into a safety battle. This is a defensive break. I'm an aggressive person. I use the aggressive break that we talked about in breaking part 1, 8 ball break part 1. However, if I'm up against a situation where I feel like it would be better to have a more prolonged game, this would be the break that I'd use. And you can see there's really nothing here on the table for whoever it is. So let's talk about how this break works. Okay, so first of all, cue ball is going to go about a ball and a half out from the side. The closer to the side it is, the more they break up. And we'll talk about that in the next break specifically for a reason. We want to break, as always. If you look at the rack and you see that there's a bunch of little gaps on that side of the rack, you want to break from this side. If you see a bunch of gaps over on this side of the rack, you want to break from the other side. You're going to use low outside English, as low and as outside as you're comfortable with. And we're going to want to hit the 10 ball. We're going to want to hit as much of the 10 ball as we can. Because hitting as much of the 10 ball as we can drives the 6 into that far corner, or the 15 in this corner if you break from the other side. The way that we do that is we do not aim at the 10, we aim at the gap between the 14 and the 9. Now, if for some reason you have to adjust, which is possible, there are all kinds of different adjustment points. You can aim at 12, you can aim at 14, you can aim at the gap between 12 and the 4, the 12 and the 14. There's all these little aiming points that you can use in here. But we're going to start by aiming between the 9 and the 14. And we're going to hit it with bottom left-hand English. Again, the purpose of this, defensive break. If the 6 goes in, great. That means we get to play it safe afterwards and bust our stuff out of the cluster while leaving their stuff stuck. And if not, that's just fine because they're going to have to play safe at some point. And our best case basis is that they pick off all the balls that are not in the cluster and then they start trying to figure out what to do with those. And if they do that, you just win. In 8-ball, one of the big keys to 8-ball strategy is not to run off all your balls and get stuck with 1 or 2 that you can't figure out, because then your opponent can play safe against you forever. But if you have all your balls spread out on the table, they can't do that. So we're going to look in this rack, we're going to look to break defensively. Again, bottom left angle, about a ball to a ball and a half off the rail. Closer to the rail is better. You want to hit it with bottom outside English. So if you're breaking from the left, it's bottom left. If you're breaking from the right side of the table, it's bottom right. We're going to aim at the gap between the 9 and the 14. If we're on that side, we're going to aim at the gap between the 9 and the 7. We want to make contact with as much of the 10 ball as possible. It is okay if you nip the 1 before hitting the 10. If you do that, your lead gets a little iffy, but it really doesn't affect the break, the way the break works. So when we do this break, we have to still have the rule that says you have to drive 4 balls plus the cue ball to the rail. Or 4 balls including the cue ball, or not including the cue ball to the rail. So it's still the same breaking rule you always have. We're not trying to hit it any softer. We're hitting this medium to hard speed. We want things to go to the rails, but we want this, basically this little area right here, just to stay inside the rack area. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our 10 breaks. Okay. It's a good break. And again, problem here, problems in here for stripes. So solids are kind of messed up, stripes are kind of messed up. It's a defensive break. It's not my favorite break. The only reason I would use it is in a case where I want to hold up the other player or where I have a significant advantage in safety play. Once again, defensive break. That'll work. All right, so that was the side break. It's a defensive break. It is very similar in nature to the 8-ball break. However, it's not the 8-ball break, and we'll do the 8-ball break next because that is the third of the 8-ball. That is the third of the breaks that I'm doing for the game of 8-ball. You saw it, it's very consistent about leaving the middle of the rack alone. There's almost always a cluster right where the rack was sitting, regardless of how solid I hit it. I think we have 1 or 2 where the ball's spread out a little and on both of those we made balls. So ultimately, that's the break of the day. It is the second of the 8-ball breaks. There's one more 8-ball break, then we'll do my 1 pocket break, and then we'll move on to some other games. All right, with that, we're gonna let you go. If you like what you saw, hit like, hit subscribe, ding the notification bell, and we'll see you next time.